to, like, what wording, what sentiments do you think are most beneficially imparted to youth who have been raised in that, to make them understand the actual tragedy and danger of these weapons?
Well, we do. We go to high schools. We've been to a number of them. In New York, we taught 5 days at least already with 100 students each in the body. And we teach them the truth about law, you know, about crime, but also about, you know, what we are made to love. You know, we go into the moral part of who we are as people in the world and what patriotism really means. We're global citizens. Everything happens globally. What affects, you know, this bumblebee here, you know, goes across the world. And, you know, we try to appeal to the truth of the matter of the environment and of the people of God. And you don't even have to use God, because everybody has, you know, some connections with relatives today and family, you know, across the world. So peacemakers will be rejected until people understand the relationship we have in the global community. When you speak the truth like you just spoke, you are so amazing to have that within a body of students. You know, when people write papers and they start researching the truth, they are converted, because, you know, what you just said, those students said, a judge said to me when I was arrested at APL, he said, well, you know, I said, do you believe in law, international law, the supreme court of this land? And he said, the bomb of Hiroshima saved my life, saved millions of lives. And I walked out of the courtroom and said, I'm not going to go before him. He has to drag me in, because what he's saying is already programmed as a falsity. He cannot try me justly, and he didn't. Put us in jail, you know. But the thing about it is, what you are so essential. You know, when we speak at some high schools, we were so privileged to have the medal from the Nobel Peace Prize in our hands to take to the high school students, you know, in New York. And when they held it, they shook. They had never seen one. They had never had the experience of one. So there are things that have to begin to touch people's lives. When they went home and told their parents, they actually had the Nobel Peace Prize in their hands. And we had pictures of them with the treaty and with the Nobel Peace Prize. Just those kinds of things, you know, that are truth-telling are so important. But don't worry how you're criticized. I mean, when you speak the truth, you will feel the presence of God in your life. That's what's important. But Scott's going to respond, I think, and that's good.
You're correct, but also the other thing, when people say the bomb saved my life, or this, or you know, typical arguments for the bomb, a good study of history, and I recommend the Nuclear Almanac from MIT, but there are other sources too, indicates that the Japanese tried to surrender in May of 1945. Very
September,
serious.
started in September of
Right,
44.
but the sole hinge, the sole thing that they wanted was that the emperor be allowed to remain. And the U.S. refused those overtures, which came through the Soviet Union, which still had relations with the Japanese, because we were demanding unconditional surrender.
That's right.
Well, Emperor Hirohito lived almost till 1980 as the Emperor of Japan. We never cared a ding-dong about him remaining emperor. So we could have agreed to that. Why did we not agree in earlier 1945? And many, many people died, mostly Asians, but many Americans died as well. It's an important fact to say the bomb killed Americans. not just the Americans that were all killed in the time that they waited for it to be finished, because the bomb wasn't finished yet, but it also killed American prisoners of war and others that were targeted underneath the bomb. So the bomb took American lives, extremely important history to know, and it's important to realize the second bomb was scheduled for the 11th, and Truman himself moved it to the 9th because he was panicked the Japanese would surrender and we would not get to drop the second bomb. So this is the sickest of sick things. We wanted to drop those two, and if you look back at the Worcester paper, for instance, Worcester, Massachusetts, the newspaper releases on August 7th, the Russians were shocked about the bomb. Right. And there's a front page story in the Worcester paper, AP story, Molotov discusses Jap peace bid. The Russians immediately introduced this information that the US had a chance to surrender months earlier. Yeah. Americans at the time took that as, well, they didn't agree with, unconditional surrender, and they didn't remember, they didn't have the history to remember when the treaty was signed that we let the emperor stay. The second thing, then, the newspaper accounts that were released right then, is they told us that this was absolutely militarily necessary. And actually, meetings were held at the White House, and the director of the Admiralty in the Pacific told Truman the Japanese were defeated because of the naval blockade. There was no need for a land invasion.
That's right.
Americans talked about a land invasion and people were going to die like they died in Okinawa and so on, and the bomb saved our lives. This was not going to happen. The head of the Air Force said it was not going to happen. Eisenhower called it abominable. People at the time, military leaders, condemned it. We need to know this. We need to, people that were working on the bomb itself, the Frank Commission, opposed it. And we need to know this history, because the crap, they don't just lie to you in the lead up, they lie in the aftermath when they package the stories too. So it's not just that it was appalling that we killed innocent people, for whatever our reasons were, but it becomes aware those people died as an anti-Soviet event, not as a military event, not to save American lives. They died as a statement of American power, as a test of weapons on cities. The newspaper accounts that Truman released, he said, we have hundreds of these weapons and we continue to drop them until we have unconditional surrender. We had two. It was a lie. Lied. We lied to the American people, lied to the population. We will drop them over and over. This is why we had to drop two, so we could make this statement. We've got them in plenitude and we're going to keep doing this. So I think it's important for people of the older generation to hear quotes from Eisenhower, to hear quotes from Admiral LeMay, to hear, these statements that will make it clear that this isn't just newfound pacifist understanding. This was a load of crap lied to us, from the beginning. The second thing is companies like Lockheed, GT, whatever. These companies, they care about only one thing, because it's capitalism. Money. They care about money.
It's big business.
And we need to be making the argument, not just that money will be taken away from them through divestment and so on. We need to be making the argument that we are now in a survival situation vis-a-vis the environment.
That's right.
And changes have to be made to our roads, to our infrastructure, to our entire power grid that are going to be enormously expensive.
That's right.
Roads redone so that they can predominantly accommodate bicycles and pedestrians, and that and mass transportation that would be reliable and free. And these companies need to be sold on. There is money for them to make in this transition.
That's what Jim signed the bill about that.
Yes.
Jim McGovern signed the switch to green.
Right. Here's the new study.
Warheads to windmills.
Warheads to windmills.
But also
That's right,
beyond
that's
that,
right. And if they
Yeah.
realize that they'll make money there,
Right.
they don't care.
Well, and Scott, there's a new film out. We have not seen it, okay? It's controversial. It's called Planet of the Humans. And Jeff Gibbs, who's a friend of ours from Michigan, was the producer. Mike Moore is part of it. They don't have a distributor yet, okay? But what he raises in this, he's been working on it for like 15, 20 years, Jeff has. He was shocked at what he found, because he found that all of the so-called green corporations and whatnot are involved in green energy because there's money to be made. And the two things he really brings out, and you just have to Google in Planet of the Humans, and you can read all kinds of stuff on it. But it's we have to live simpler, less consumerism, and he talks about population control, that the population cannot continue to grow at the state it is. And when he talks about simpler lifestyle, he says, yeah, electric cars are fine, but everybody can't have an electric car. I mean, let's say we could all have electric cars. That's not conducive to the planet, you know. That. So I just mentioned that. Marge, you had your hand.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say that in the 80s, I went into many, many high school classes in New Haven, many of them. And most of the students didn't even know about the bombing of
That's
Hiroshima
right. That's
and
right.
Nagasaki.
Exactly.
That's for starters.
That's right.
Then we showed the film. I think the visual is really important.
too.
So we showed the film Gods of Metal about
Yes.
1,000 times. And we talked about is it Sudoku? The woman who did the 1,000 Cranes.
Sudoku.
Sudoku.
Yeah,
Well, we
Sudoku.
talked about that, and I feel that the conversation at that point was very good. And I'm afraid maybe things have changed tremendously. I know they have among high school students. I know they have. But from my grandson, I'm picking up a high level of indignation, at least, about what's going
I
on
think so too.
in this country. And so, and he's not going to a radical school at all. It's not a private school. So I'm not hopeless about the younger generation. My second point is, and I agree with the point on the corporation. I mean, capitalism
Oh,
will
yes.
take us down the
Yep.
drain.
Yep.
And I think we have to come to terms with that.
Yep.
They will take us to
Total
annihilation
collapse.
Right.
if they have to.
Right.
Maybe we can present these alternatives, I don't know. But I'm very disappointed at the lack of mobilization. And I wonder if that's part of this treaty work. I mean, nobody's in the streets, really. in the
Regarding
streets.
nuclear weapons?
About nuclear weapons, for one.
Well, we were 800,000 in the streets with March for Our Lives. We're 35,000 immediately regarding the border. You know, environment, there's mass movements all over. We became part of the Poor People's Alliance, which was kind of negated last night. I don't want it negated because they deal with poverty, racism, militarism, the environmental devastation, voting rights, and unionization. And the reason is they have organized 40 capitals actions. There have been thousands of people for the first time arrested at those capitals. They have called for a march on Washington June 20th, 2020.
Yeah, put that on your calendar.
And
June 20th.
people are mobilizing in all of these places, in all these states, 40 states. I don't know what's wrong with the other 10, but 40 states. And, you know, when we've gone out, I mean, it's masses of people at every one of the demonstrations that they have. And they've had them in D.C., but they've had them all over in other places.
They're not in Philadelphia. They're not.
That's surprising to me. They're at the capitals of
Yeah.
the states. So
Yeah, I don't know why
if they haven't come to Pennsylvania, I'm shocked at it because they're still going out mobilizing people. And there was like criticism of Reverend Theo Harris and Reverend Barber, but these two, an African American and white, you know, have combined. This is what we had a conference. And at that conference, 9 of the persons candidates for office came before them. And they had everyone from Native American to people who fought in the wars, who reject militarism and going to other countries and killing people, to, you know, poverty, people who don't have health care and so on. They challenged those candidates. And then 8 of them went to, for the first time, to the Hill, to the budget hearing. And they gave their stories and their testimony. And it's when it came out that 140 million people in the United States are living in poverty, 1 check away from poverty on the streets. I mean, there's homeless, but then there's people who have worked and they have something that they're going to lose. And so when they spoke before the Congress, every Republican came out and said, I was poor growing up too. And they wouldn't address the poor. So the pleading was that poor people, that there be debates about poverty and racism in the United States at those forums. I think we have to carry that forth in the forums that are going on with the candidates that are left. There's 3, 1 Libertarian running now, 2 Republicans, and there's 10 strong Democrats yet. There'll be a few more, I think, still working hard. So, you know, when they come, I think that we're going to have to be the ones that develop the forum on those issues that are so pertinent to us.
So the Poor People's Campaign has a moral budget. You can read it online. It's
Right.
an excellent budget, including all of the areas.
And this is a
that are-
budget too, you know.
Yeah,
There's a
and that's
budget as it
components.
relates to
That's there.
conversion in the environment to the green plan.
We're going to close this. We're going to be here. We'll continue to answer questions, but I'm conscious of time. I know
Well,
you
let's
want to
have-
keep
let's-
to the schedule.
Let's have just one more question. Is somebody
It's got to be
burning?
really quick, because otherwise we're
Anyone,
going
or
to
do you
get
want to
off.
go right into lunch with?
Let's-
Let me ask this just hypothetical question. You know, what I've been finding, even though there's a lot of noise around the presidential campaign, with a lot of Democrats trying to figure out how to fit on a stage, we're not talking about nuclear weapons very much at all in that.
Just
How
one
do
person has.
How do you put that issue in the campaign?
Okay.
I mean, what is it worthwhile, or is it a pipe dream to get a solid brief, this impressive politicians, that document this thick, and take it to a half a dozen of these campaigns and say, start talking about this?
It has been done,
It
Paul,
has.
and it is being done.
Yeah.
It
You
has
know what?
been done, and it is being done, and
I'm not
that's why
hearing
they're
you speak,
saying,
though,
It's,
very much.
you've only had 2 debates on stage.
there's only been 2 debates.
And there were,
Wow.
On the
there were
stage.
quick questions because there were
That-
20 people
Yeah, but that's
answering.
not all I'm reading. I'm saying, you know, even in any of the coverage,
No, you're
I
right.
seldom see much
Well,
said by
and-
any of the candidates.
Yeah,
on-
and the media
on
doesn't
these
want,
issues.
yeah, the media doesn't want to cover
The
it.
media
Well, I'm
is
talking about
an
progressive
issue.
media too.
Right.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
I
what I'm
mean,
talking
it's-
about.
it's-
They're not.
How do we make that a more central issue rather than a marginal issue in the eyes of the candidates who are at?
People need to call in. People need to bring it forth. It's not gonna happen, one person calls, they need hundreds of phone calls. How
Right.
come, you know, what's your position on this? You know, why aren't we hearing about this?
I think it's an uphill battle, and I
It
guess I'm
is.
asking whether it's a worthwhile effort.
Well, do you believe in
Because-
saving the planet? I mean,
course.
if a nuclear weapon is used, it's all over.
These small nukes are programmed, they'll be online in September. There's
September
100
15th.
plus of them. And we have a
They're all on.
president that is into doing it because he thinks that that can kill off that nation, Iran probably. And so, I mean, it's all connected. And, you know, we had 70,000 nuclear weapons at one time. We're down to, right now, they say 13,000 some. But we have people, the young people, all from all these different nations working on it. And, you know, we're trying in the United States, we're hoping you will too, that wherever you are, in high schools or colleges or wherever you are, that you will feel comfortable saying the treaty doesn't allow possession of nuclear weapons, doesn't allow, this is the time. We gotta get rid of them. We've gotta stop war. We have to become human again. I don't know, whatever way we can do it. But I think it's an urgent time and it's a possibility. That's why we're working so hard. I'd love to have plowshare actions at every nuclear site. It would be great. And at the same time, have the treaty and say you're defying laws of the land, you know? I mean, we could do it.
And
So-
Pope Francis is the first pope to condemn the possession of
And
nuclear
he's
weapons.
been so strong.
The
I mean,
possession.
Our Catholic Church should be the ones that are leading it, but they're, we know they're not, but.
Yes.
We will.
All right, yes,
Thank
people
you
have to
very
go.
Thank you for listening.
Megan asked me if I would just allow, we had two of our friends who showed up late, to just introduce yourself, and then we'll move to lunch.
To lunch.
Thank you.
March, Bill?
My name's Mark Shankley, and I live in Philadelphia suburb.
Dr. Bill, what's up?
That's it.
All right, Bill?
Hey, Dr.
Very
Bill.
good.
Thank you.
There you go, Megan, we got it done.
Thank you, thank you. All right, very good.
Come on, give us 2 words.
That's 4 words. Like 2 of them, I'd say. Very good. We're in the circle, you want to do Grace?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, well, we should get our cooks in.
I'll go get
Yeah, as long as we're here, let's do Grace.
Thank you.
Really?
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, isn't she fantastic?